Hi everybody, welcome on this Saturday morning and afternoon and evening in London. This is a live video conference broadcast across the United States and in London. We also have a new center in Australia, but it is very early in the morning, so we didn't ask them to get up and have people there. I'm very excited to be speaking to all of you about something that I think is a critical component of teaching students to read and spell and comprehend and process math and generally process language. And with that, I'm going to turn to the PowerPoint and tell all of you that my goal for this next hour is to teach you about why we need to do appropriate comprehensive learning evaluations and what those evaluations look like in terms of the component parts of reading. And we're going to go through a lot of case studies. You should have a handout. I'm going to ask you to write some things on your handout. By about midway through this presentation, I'm going to be asking you to be diagnosticians. So let's go. Eventually, we hope to be scheduling an Imagine Learning lecture series, and this is the first of the series talking about diagnostic learning evaluations. The next one will be on what happens with instruction when you diagnose in an appropriate way. So the first slide says to you that an appropriate, and I'm going to write something in here, and an appropriate and comprehensive diagnostic learning evaluation is a prerequisite for appropriate instruction. And as you know, despite years and years and years of spending thousands and millions of dollars to try to make a difference for the children in our public schools and also our private schools, we still are significantly behind. And so I think it's important for you to know that I believe that we can do better than we are, and we need to get better outcomes. And of course, here's why. 38% of the fourth graders across the United States cannot read at a basic level. And in low-income school districts, that reaches 70%. 6 million plus students have learning disabilities across the United States, and we spend $70 to $80 billion on those students that are in special education. And the reason that the students are in special education is because 80 to 90% of those students can't read. And so the obvious thing is, if we can do a better job of diagnosing what needs to happen for a child to teach that child or those children to learn to read, we can reduce the costs for special education, the money that we're spending in special education now. So first of all, at Lindamood-Bell and across the country, where many of you are sitting in some of our learning centers, we see students that are at the 6th grade reading at a 1st grade level. We can see students at the 9th grade comprehending language at a 3rd or a 2nd grade level. And so something has interfered with those students being able to make a year gain for a year of school as they go up that pipeline of compensatory education. The biggest weaknesses that children experience are in the area of language comprehension and decoding. So for us, the question has been, what is the cause of that? Not thinking that you want to diagnose and find out a child's strength. There, for many years, I can tell you that Pat Lindamood and Phyllis Lindamood and myself talked a lot about the fact that there was this theory in the field of education that if you would diagnose and find the strength that a child had, then you would come and teach to that strength. I think that you're going to know by the end of this hour why I don't think that that's what we should be doing. We need to find the cause. Why do some individuals develop language literacy skills and others do not? It isn't haves and have-nots in terms of IQ. That's been thrown out a long time ago. It's not socioeconomic status either. There's got to be something else. And what I'm hoping to do today is to help you understand what the why is, the answer to the why. And here's the first piece of that answer. Sensory input is needed for cognition and language processing. So if you ask yourself why there are some students that have difficulty decoding a word, I can tell you that it's the sensory level that the weakness is. If you ask why there's some students have difficulty comprehending, again, that weakness is at the sensory level. It's not those other factors that we have in the field of education ruled out, and that is socioeconomic status, IQ, etc. And this is what your first lesson for the day is, from someone named Carl Pribram, who basically wrote something I think is almost impossible to understand. I'm going to try to interpret it for you, but it's critical that you get it. He says we cannot think, and think being cognition. We cannot think, and maybe back up for a second. I want you to also know that reading and spelling are cognitive acts. I have it on the slide. But reading and spelling and comprehending, that is cognition. So what he's saying there is appropriate for what we're trying to do in teaching students to process language, their language and literacy skills. He says we cannot think about something of which we are not consciously aware, and we cannot be aware of something not perceived sufficiently at the sensory level to come to consciousness. So basically what he's saying is that you need sensory information in order to be able to think. You need to be able to bring that to consciousness, especially when you need it. Ultimately, you and I don't have to do that. When we're reading along, we don't have to bring everything to consciousness, but we can at the sensory level if we need to. Language and literacy are cognitive acts, and sensory cognitive functions underlie the ability to read and spell and comprehend. So you can see that I'm building a case here for you. The amount of sensory processing available to a child or an adult is a primary factor in learning to read. There are individual differences in the amount of sensory information available. So these sensory cognitive factors, where there are these individual differences, can be identified, and fortunately they can be stimulated and applied. We don't just stimulate the sensory function without applying it over to processing language. To facilitate language and literacy development, and this is the biggie for the day, weakness in sensory cognitive functions is the cause of weakness in reading, spelling, and comprehension.